Hello and welcome to the Browns Blitz. Today is Thursday, June 17th. I'm your host, Rod Bloom. Joining me today is my brother, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Hey, Rod, doing okay, other than, the midsummer grass allergy that's kind of got me a little bit clogged up tonight. So
Yeah.
I'm not snorting Coke or anything if people hear me sniffling.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
At least not this time.
Joining us today is our guest, Erick Hellwig from the Bring in the Backups podcast and other things. Erick, how are things going?
Rod, Jeff, I'm doing good. And I should let your listeners know if you hear me sniffling, it's because I can't stop snorting cocaine. I just can't stop. It's the only way I feel.
Excellent. That's good to know as well.
I really like. That was the most graceful way to forget somebody's credits. To be like, he's from the Bring in the Backups podcast and other things. I really liked that.
Yeah. So people can follow you, I guess, at the Bring Up the Backups. That's at Backups Pod, and your main Twitter account is at Erick Hellwig. That's Erick with a K, Hellwig with two L's.
CK for Erick, just to make sure your listeners go to the right spot.
Yeah. So I should have said CK. I'm looking at thinking everybody knows there's a C. There's just an extra K. Since we're just starting, is there anything else you want to plug right off the bat? Because I got to tell you, Erick, I'm not really good at remembering to go back to plugging later in the show.
That's fair, man. Just go to my website. It's Erick Hellwig, ErickHellwig. If you think I'm funny on this podcast, it's to be determined whether or not people will want to follow up with other stuff I've done. But assuming I don't suck for the next hour, you just go to my website and I link to my podcast, my stand-up dates, all that stuff you can find right there at the website.
Yeah, so your podcast, you talk obviously about backup quarterbacks, and you've done I don't know how long you've been doing the pod and how many pods you've done, but you've talked about some Browns backups because obviously Browns probably have more backups and more quarterbacks to pick from than any other team. So kind of give us a little bit of a rundown there of how how you got the podcast started and how you pick the quarterbacks that you pick and why you kind of drift towards some of these Browns guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible not to drift towards the Browns because you guys are famous. You have a famous jersey of nothing but backup quarterbacks. So I feel like half the backup quarterbacks were like the future of the Browns at some point in the last 20 years. This is obviously before Baker showed up. So I think you guys just have a natural.
To be fair, Erick, those guys were actually starters here. Everywhere else they may have been backups.
No, that's very true. No, I mean the standard I use to choose my backup is they have to have been a backup for longer than they were a starter. So I look at like how many years were they in the NFL, how many years were they starting. If it's less than half, they're in. And just so you know, every single quarterback on that jersey that you guys have qualifies as a backup.
Pretty easily, too.
It's not even close. Like they all started 5 games for you and nowhere else. So
and then they were a backup for like 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I found the 2 Cleveland guys I've done 20 episodes, and the 2 Cleveland guys I've done are Kelly Holcomb and Charlie Fry. I think there's been other guys who stopped in Cleveland for a little bit, but those guys are like recognizably, I would say, Browns before they're anything else. And Kelly Holcomb was just because I liked him and I remembered that playoff game. I always thought it was like so cool that the backup almost beat, the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Like I was really rooting for you guys in that game. So I wanted to have him on. And then Charlie Fry was because I was doing a comedy festival in Ohio and I had to put a podcast out, and I realized a day before, like, oh, I didn't pick a quarterback for this episode. And then I was like, well, I'm in Akron. Are there any Akron quarterbacks that made the NFL, like from the local university? And I found Charlie Fry, and I was like, oh, I remember that dude. And then he ended up being like a fun person to kind of research a little bit. He had a fun career. But yeah, that's how I got. That's how my podcast has de facto become like a Browns backup podcast. I didn't mean it to be, but you guys it's such a selection bias. Half the league, like I said, feels like they called you guys home.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get all the Browns quarterbacks covered by like episode 140. Something like that. So
I want to get Seneca Wallace. I liked him a lot. I remembered him.
Yeah.
And then you guys didn't you have that quarterback that was like 30 when he came? I can't remember. It was like Whedon. Was it
Brandon Whedon?
Brandon Whedon.
He started for a while.
Yeah.
Eric, I'm going to stop you and go back because Jeff is a Charlie Fry guy, and it's not like he thinks Charlie Fry should still be starting or anything, but Jeff kind of was a Charlie Fry fan because of him being from the area and that. So I want to give Jeff a chance to either talk some Charlie Fry or ask you a couple questions about Charlie Fry since you've been researching him recently.
Sure.
Oh man, that's tough. I mean, Charlie was, like you said it, he was a fun guy. I don't really have any questions, Rod.
I just thought you might. I wanted to give you a chance, Jeff, because
Jeff, it's good you don't have any questions. It's good Jeff doesn't have any questions because I don't have any answers. When I say I researched Charlie Fry, I mean I was masturbating, took a break for 5 minutes, Googled Charlie Fry, read half an article, and went back to masturbating.
That's about as much time as it would take to research him.
Yeah, that's the nice part about my podcast is it's not like extensive research on anybody. I just booked. I mean, this will be a little bit of spoiler alert if any of your fans end up coming into my pod, but I'm going to be interviewing a guy named Jabron Hamden. He's my first quarterback to come on the show. No quarterback has had everybody that I've talked about on the show, I've sent a message to or an email being like, please come on. And I thought Charlie Fry has been liking all the posts that I do, but he hasn't responded to come do the show. But this guy, Jabron Hamden, agreed to do my podcast. I'm interviewing him tomorrow. The episode will come out in like 2.5 weeks. But his NFL stats, swear to God, these are his stats. He's 1 for 2 for 7 yards. And that is so perfect for my podcast. It's like I actually want to build up. I'm only going to, like the second quarterback I have on will have 2 career completions. The third quarterback will have 3. I'm going to build the show as backup-y as I possibly can. But I actually thought Charlie Fry was like, I mean, I watched his highlights. The dude could move. I saw him like juke out a couple defensive ends for touchdowns. Like he was a kind of like a scrambler. And it was, the whole thing was like he was bad the season before the Browns had that run with Derek Anderson. And then he started the Derek Anderson season, but he got pulled in like the second quarter after he threw 10 passes. And then Derek Anderson had a Pro Bowl year. So that was the end of Charlie Fry in Cleveland. But it to be honest, if the team was that much better, they could have been good with him too. I feel like it was like he just got a little unlucky with his Cleveland stop, right? Like it seems like he could have gone. It seems like he could have been the quarterback if they had not just kind of like struck fool's gold with that like 6'8", slow-legged Derek everybody thought Derek Anderson was going to be like the next great quarterback. And then he just promptly
everything just came together that one season, you know.
And it's like it's one of those things where I don't think Derek Anderson's better than Charlie Fry. I think it's like sometimes a situation emerges in a locker room where guys just are more motivated and like everybody has a career year. Like there's so many factors outside of who the quarterback is at that point. Because I don't think there's a question like physically Charlie Fry is like a more gifted athlete than the other dude.
Mm. Well, didn't they play? Wasn't it didn't that season start against the Steelers and Charlie Fry got sacked a bunch of times early, and that's kind of that's the way I remember it. I just remember him kind of
door at left tackle. I think.
Yeah, he didn't have a chance, and he threw a few passes, and they pulled him probably in fear he was going to get just killed back there, and that was the end of it.
Well, as we were wont to do, we kind of threw guys to the wolves, you know, without a heck of a lot of protection or preparation. And, you know, let's see what this guy can do.
Yeah. So Eric, on this show, we like to give the guest a chance to talk about their normally their Browns fandom, but I know you're not a Browns fan. You're a football fan and fan of another franchise. So I'd like to give you a little bit of time to just talk about your how your fandom began. As far as being a football fan, a little bit about your journey as a fan of the franchise that you follow.
Sure. I'm a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. Have been my whole life. I've never lived in Philadelphia. I grew up in a military family, but my father, who's from Philly, did an amazing job of brainwashing / guilting me into rooting for Philadelphia teams. So there's literally photos of me in Germany at the age of 4. I'd never been to America, and I'm wearing a Randall Cunningham jersey for Halloween. Like I had no choice. I was going to be an Eagles fan. That was passed down like a family heirloom. And I can when I think of the first game I ever went to, which was at the old Veterans Stadium, it was the Eagles against the Cardinals, as I remember. That was back when the Cardinals were in the NFC East. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I kind of fell in love with that. Not just the team, even though the team was not great for most of the time I was young. I kind of fell in love with the way the games felt, which was, my grandparents still lived in Philly. We'd go visit once or twice a year and always catch a game. And the fans were just insane. Like, people would get into fist fights, and you would see old ladies were willing to punch men in the face if they were wearing the hat of the other team. It was really, my dad used to make the joke, when you sit in the 700 section at the vet, you get multiple sports. You get football, you get boxing, you get wrestling. I remember seeing a grown man thrown down a flight of stairs when I was 8. My dad being like, "Get him!" So it was really intense. But I also feel like it just kind of made me so diehard for Philly that even though I've continued to move around a lot in my life and have a bunch of teams that I think, claim easier than the Eagles, places I've lived for a lot longer since I've lived in Philly for 0 years. I just feel like my fanship is forged in flames of passion and, booing Santa Claus and all that stereotypical stuff about Philly fans. It's I can't escape it. It's too big a part of me. It would feel like betraying my father and my and my name if I were to even consider rooting for the Rams now that I live in LA. It's just too late for me. I'm a Philly fan, till death.
That's the way it should be. Honestly, whatever franchise you follow, you should stick with that franchise. And I think most people respect that. That's how it's supposed to be.
I do think it's how it should be. I mean, I will say, I lived in New York for 11 years after college, and I've lived now in LA for 3 years. And while there are diehard fans of New York and LA teams, I find there's a lot of fair weather sports fans in those cities. People that are with the team when they're good or abandon the team when they're bad, hence nobody wearing Knicks shit for the last 20 years. But one thing I like about Philly was we would go to games even when the team sucked and the stadium was mostly sold out. I mean, it was sold out to boo the team, but to me there was something really cool about that I traveled enough to go. I'm just trying to think of an example. I lived in South Carolina, and we went to a couple Panthers games when the Panthers sucked and the stadium's a third empty. I remember going to living in DC, and when the Redskins were bad, I said it, oops. When the Washington team of football players currently residing in Washington, D.C. were playing, the stadium was 60% Eagles fans. I'm this is a rivalry game. Who would sell their season tickets to the other team? That's so crazy to me. Yeah. And to also just being from Philly, I'm man, when the Eagles were playing the Cowboys, to show up in a Cowboys hat, you're really taking your life in your hands. You could be, it's reasonable to assume you're going to get, at the very least, stuff thrown on you. But I just remember being an Eagles fan in, whatever FedEx Field, in Maryland where the Redskins play, and being I feel way too comfortable here. This is crazy. I should not be as comfortable booing their team in their stadium as I am. So that's something I respected about Philly was like I feel like they kept their home field advantage by like being a actual passionate fan base, not just when the team is good.
Yeah. You mentioned Randall Cunningham. I think everybody liked Randall Cunningham when he kind of came into prominence because he was so much different from anybody playing at that time and the things that he could do. And, not that everybody was rooting for the Eagles, but just seeing a guy play quarterback the way he did. I mean, there's guys that they're not playing exactly the way Randall did, but he was just a lot of fun to watch back then.
Oh, no. I think the all-time career highlights reels, if you're ranking them, I think it goes Randall Cunningham. I think very close behind it is Barry Sanders. And then I would put like Lawrence Taylor. Taylor. I would put Lawrence Taylor 3. Like you can watch those highlights at any point and just feel like you're watching. It just feels like a character in Madden where like somebody just has 50 points more on every single skill set than the guy they're going up against. They're like, Randall Cunningham he's clearly the fastest person on the field. He's clearly the best athlete on the field. Clearly has the strongest arm, one of the strongest arms in the NFL, can make every throw, can do everything. It's such like a unfulfilled promise that he never really, I don't think he ever won a playoff game in Philly. I think the only games they won were when he was injured. And like, I remember Rodney Peete won a game one time.
Yeah.
It felt like the Eagles, like they were just such a compelling team. And then every time the playoffs came around, especially with that defense, it was like something happened with the offense where the wheels came off right as the playoffs were starting every year. And then, they got, we could go to McNabb becoming quarterback, and then they went to 5 NFC championship games, 4 consecutive at one point, and only went to 1 Super Bowl and lost. And you're like, it just felt like we were never going to get to the place we needed to go. And then obviously the one year we do it, it's with the damn backup quarterback. I mean, why else would I start a show about backup quarterbacks?
Perfect for your show. Yeah.
It's so perfect for my show. I mean, it's what I think in Philly there's a real thing for the backup quarterback anyway. I mean, I can't compare our list of backups to yours, but we're close. I mean, we had a lot of guys come through there in the 90s. Up until McNabb was quarterback, I mean, it was a little bit of a revolving door, I would say, in Philly as well. So I always found the city had a real affinity for like the underdog and the guy that was going to get a shot for the first time. So it felt very natural when I was thinking about what I was going to do a podcast about. I mean, I watch backup quarterback highlights on YouTube all the time. I'm like, let's see what kind of throws Cleo Lemon was making. Like nobody, like I watch a lot of YouTube videos for football players that have 38 views, and half of them are mine because I'm obsessed with people that like played in the NFL in meaningless games for like a season and a half, Yeah. So to me, it was an easy concept to turn into a podcast.
Yeah. So who's your dream guest if you could get a backup quarterback? I assume you have some kind of a list of guys that you either want to talk about, or who's the guy you'd love to have on your show?
Tom Brady's brother, Jack Brady. No, I'm kidding. I would get Coy Detmer, I think would be pretty. I loved Coy Detmer. Do you guys remember Coy Detmer? That probably not.
I know the name, but yeah, don't.
Well,
remember.
You might know Ty Detmer because I believe he was one of your guys, was he not?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, so
absolutely, he's on the list.
So Coy Detmer was Ty Detmer's less successful backup quarterback younger brother. So picture how unsuccessful Ty Detmer's NFL career was, and then picture somebody less successful than that.
Divide that by 10.
That was my favorite guy. He was on the Eagles there was one season. I mean, you guys will appreciate this. You're brothers with a highly successful podcast with millions of listeners.
Of course.
Ty Detmer and Coy Detmer were backups on the same team on the Eagles in 96, I believe. So I can't remember who the starter was that year. It was, somebody that sucked. But then Ty Detmer was the second string and Coy Detmer was the third string. Now here's a question. How would you guys handle that? if you're on a football team and someone's got to be second string and someone's got to be third string, how would the sibling rivalry work itself out?
You just got to go out there and compete. It's just how it is.
Yeah, no, I think I'd just knock him out and go play.
There you go, Jeff.
Yeah.
That might have worked when I was like in 5th grade and Jeff was in high school. But
yeah, but I've always been bigger, so not a problem.
Fight.
The fighting stopped about 20 years ago, Eric.
Did you guys, I never fit, I'm old. How much older am I than my brother? I think I'm 35. He just turned 30. So I'm like almost 6 years older than him.
We're in that same general area.
Yeah, I never like actually tried to beat him up, because if I had tried, I would have put him through a wall. Like, he was a scrawny kid. So we like, did you guys ever like really fight? Like, really?
Well, let me tell you a story, Eric. Here's what happened when we were young. We weren't super poor or anything, but we had an old box of toys, and in that box we had a set of boxing gloves, and it was just one set of boxing gloves. So we would box, and we're both right-handed, and Jeff was older. Jeff always took the right-handed glove, gave me the left, and then he beat the crap out of me.
You needed to work on your offhand. I was doing you a favor.
Well, I mean, it came, when I had rotator cuff surgery about 10 years ago, I was glad I was able to do a few things with my left hand. So actually it helped.
There you
go.
There you go. See, that's a good older brother. Way to reframe your destruction of your younger brother later in life.
Yeah. Built character. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, me and my brother, we used to, the most we would fight, and I'm putting that in quotes, which you can't tell because we turned off the video on Skype, but we would watch WWE, because I at my age, I was like right for the WWE Attitude Era, which was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and The Undertaker and all those guys. And so we would just set up pillows and then like do wrestling moves for hours and hours and hours. And I would let my brother win, but I would oftentimes like name him as like female wrestlers to try to get under his skin. That was the worst. I think I teased him. Is like, I would be The Rock, and I would like, he would come out for his like, we would do our like announcer walk down to the ring, and I would make him Lita, and he would get really mad. This is very, by the way, insider. It's like, this is only going to work if people know WWE superstars from the early 2000s. But if you do, I made my brother Lita for about 2 years, and it really pissed him off.
It's great. And by the way, I really like how we're getting you to open up on this podcast.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, this is nothing, dude. If you listen to my show, I'm like, I think I'm gay. Like, I open up every week. Like, I hold nothing back. I feel like that's the way to go. No, but I mean, I don't know. I'm always like, when I go on other people's podcasts, like, am I allowed to tell people what's on the docket for the show? I don't want to be a spoiler alert here, but you were like, some people like really like to get into the nitty gritty of sports. Like when I do a sports podcast, some people are like me and they're just kind of like making shit up. Like my podcast involves almost no research. It's just me being like, I think that guy never got a shot. That's not based on anything I know about football. It's just like a feeling in my stomach that comes out of my mouth that is based in nothing. But like some people are like, let's talk about OTAs and practice and what was the team move doing with this roster move. I'm like, I have no ability to play mini ESPN. So I'm like, all I have is my personal stories and my problems. So if I can't talk about that, I can't talk about anything. So yeah, you'll always get an open book when booking me on your show.
Well, we dig in occasionally, but we've got months, to get into roster breakdowns and all that stuff. So
well,
we're just
it's the perfect time to have like a shitty stand up on your show because nothing's happening.
This is what we call June entertainment.
Yeah, I thought let's get that Erick guy on. This should be fun.
Hey, you're like, maybe we should just booking me is usually the thought after someone considers not doing the podcast for a month. Like maybe we take a break. Maybe I don't do the podcast ever again. Oh, I guess I have to book someone. Who's someone I know will be available? How about that comic that I talked to on Twitter 6 months ago? That's usually how I get booked. It's been effective for me. I'll take it.
Well, I was actually on vacation last week, Eric. So I came back. I have been watching Browns minicamp, so I feel like I'm kind of caught up on stuff. But I thought this would be a great way to kind of just wade back in a little bit. Just kind of have some fun, talk a little bit of Browns. Have fun listening to your experiences with your show and everything. So, but Jeff, let's go to another topic. Do you want to talk a little bit about minicamp, or do you want to talk about the article I wrote?
Well, minicamp has been pretty uneventful. But let's wade through that real quick.
Yeah, I've got just a few things that I made some notes. We pretty much go unscripted here, but just some thoughts. I mean, for me, the Browns minicamp, I like the tone of it. These guys are just they're having fun. These guys feel comfortable. Seems like they're being real smart. Just kind of going half speed and doing the 7-on-7s, and they're trying to be really, really careful that nobody gets hurt. Which is smart. You don't care how much guys learn if they miss the season.
Well, yeah, that's counterproductive.
Yeah. That, and the other parts of the news were the talking about the contract extensions that they've been discussed for Baker and Chubb and Ward. It's kind of seeing how the new guys did in rookie camp and in this mini camp. The free agent guys and the guys they just drafted, obviously. It's looking at the recovery and where some of these guys stand. OBJ, Greedy, and Grant Delpit. They're all out there doing something. Those three guys. So we have hope. We've been hearing different things and stuff. So to see them all out there, at least running around, at least you kind of feel like, there's a chance that these guys could either be ready at the beginning of the season or at least contribute this season. But to me, the biggest news and the biggest question of training camp was who has bigger arms, Nick Chubb or Myles Garrett? It's really hard to tell because they both look like they've just spent the last 4 or 5 months in the gym. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I thought Myles busting out of that suit on draft night was pretty impressive. But Eric, you'll enjoy this. Jadeveon Clowney made the statement the other day that he may finally have someone on the defensive line opposite him who is as good a physical specimen as him and can play as well as he does. He's talking about Myles Garrett.
He said that with a straight face.
He said that with a straight face. Yeah, I thought that was good.
Wait a second. Wasn't he on the team with J.J. Watt?
Yeah. Last season, yeah.
That's insane. That's an insane thing to say. No, I mean, that's no offense to Myles Garrett, but like J.J. Watt might be one of the best defensive players to ever live. Like he's up there with with Reggie White. Like that's so crazy. Ah, man, people's egos. That's insane. I want to answer one of your questions though. I think Myles Garrett is a little more jacked than Nick Chubb, and part of that is like his workout routine. I don't know if you guys know the best thing you can do for your biceps is to swing another player's helmet as hard as you can at the top of their forehead. It's actually the best way to get some definition in the arms. It's a real size builder. So I'll go with that.
Might be a little sore subject.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Myles, I don't think there's a muscle on Myles' body that's not jacked right now.
Do you guys, how old are you guys? I'm curious.
Ancient.
We're way older than you.
So do you struggle with the idea of them changing like OTAs and mini camps to be like very safe for players as far as like hydration and stuff like that? Because I was watching this movie on ESPN a while ago. It was about Bear Bryant, and like this movie's maybe 20 years old, and it's before he was at Alabama. I think he was at like Texas Tech or something, and it's this movie where they're out in the sun, like, and he's like running a summer camp. And the movie could have been called Water is for Pussies. Like that's basically the whole movie is like you're not allowed to drink water or you're gay. And he almost kills like 13 kids, and they're all 17. And then the movie's not like, and look how wrong it is. The movie's like, and this guy, look at this guy's a genius, and it's just him trying to kill kids the whole time. So I'm wondering how you guys feel when you think of the game that you watched. You know, all the teams had cooler uniforms, but no CTE protection, and water was gay. How do you feel about that compared to what it looks like now?
Well, you know, everything evolves, Eric. You know, I'm into old cars. They didn't have seat belts back in the day. They didn't have analog brakes. They didn't, you know, a lot of things weren't in cars, and cars were a lot of fun. Now, I still like driving them, but you know, I'll take today's safety features over what we had back then any day. So. Yeah, I get it. It was pound your chest manly, you know, when you survived two-a-days in high school, you know. Yeah. Kids threw up, you know, all day long, you know, to lose weight and get in shape and stuff. I mean, I think the sort of the net of Rod's article is teams have learned, and especially over the last, you know, 15 months or so, teams have learned how to accomplish the same sorts of things, not only without all that physical exertion, but remotely. You know, so we've kind of gone past the idea that you have to go out and physically prove yourself in training camp. We know what these guys are.
It's interesting. Like I remember. I was listening. I watch a lot of because my dad was in the Army. He went to West Point, so I'm a big Army football fan. And there's nothing more beautiful than a triple option offense run efficiently, guys. And I was listening to the Army coach, and he was talking about like how they take care of the players' nutrition and they keep them hydrated, and it's all about like learning during like the mini camp stuff. And this is at the Army. And I remember my dad telling me stories about like how he would get ready for his sporting when he was at West Point. And they were like, yeah, they would basically like throw us under the wheels of a truck, and whoever survived gets to start the next week. Like it just was so different. Like it was like, it really, I don't know how to describe it as anything other than abuse. But yeah, like I just think it's so, not funny is not the right word, but it's always jarring to me. And I'm always curious how people, take that change, because I know there's like the stereotypical like, oh, they put dresses on them now, and then there's like the people that are a little more willing to like let the thing evolve and become a little safer. And yeah, you know, it's a give and pull with that, I guess.
All right. Well, I'll say this as a guy who picked Saquon Barkley in the first round of his fantasy draft last year. I want to see these guys play. So and they're bigger, faster, stronger. You know, they can kill each other out there. So, you know, whatever it takes to keep these guys safe. And that's not even looking at the money aspect of it. You know, how much money these guys make and how much money, you know, it comes about from them playing and everything else. So, yeah, I think playing it safe so that hopefully these guys can play more games versus being hurt more often, it just makes sense.
I think you hit it with the money. I think it always comes down to that. There's so much more invested. Yeah. Like now, like when somebody wins the Super Bowl, they're like, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to Disney World." It used to be like in Super Bowl I, it'd be like, "Where are you going?" And you're like, "I'm going to my job building skyscrapers with no connection and eating lunch on a beam 90 stories above New York City." Like everybody had other, like you made like $7 being an NFL player. So yeah, I think now it's like, because there's so much invested, it's not like a care in anybody's well-being. It's like, it's protecting investments.
You're right. And back then, you know, if a guy got hurt, yeah, he wasn't as big of an investment. And there were other guys that just jump in, you know, they just have a tryout and bring somebody else in. And there weren't as many big names, I don't think, way back then. So, they weren't as careful with the guys. Of course, guys were tougher then too. I mean, look at the pictures of Otto Graham playing with his mouth busted up and everything else.
Oh yeah.
I still think they were tougher back then.
Well, they had to be. Look, my grandfather survived Normandy, and he talked about it once. And my wife takes photos of tacos before she eats them. So like, I'm not trying to hate on the new generation, but like, let's be real. None of us measure up to the shit that people had to do like 60 years ago. Like, it's not even close. It's not even close.
No, not at all. So
anyway, keep talking about OTAs. I took us away. My bad.
No, you're fine. I just really like just the way the guys sound. These guys are all, and like I said in the article, you probably see this on every team and everything, but it just feels different for the Browns. The guys complimenting each other, and guys really seem like they're having fun and forming friendships and kind of building like a family type atmosphere, that the kind of thing you need on a team that's going to try to go somewhere. But I want to go back to what you were talking about with the training and everything, Jeff, and the Browns and the NFL finding that they can get to the same place by doing other things with these Skype meetings, guys training on their own. I don't know if you heard Joel Bitonio's presser. It was yesterday, but he talked about how working out on his own, and not having to come to the facility and not having to come to OTAs and to all these different things, not having everything be mandatory before you get to training camp, that he doesn't have to try to peak like 3 or 4 different times through the year, that it's better for him to train only having to peak, kind of near mini camp and then for training camp. And it kind of makes sense, especially, if you're an offensive lineman. I mean, because a lot of these guys, an offensive lineman, these guys, I know what Joe Thomas used to do. Joe Thomas lost a lot of weight in the off season, and then he would bulk back up before the season. So I don't know if all these guys do that, but imagine trying to do that several times through the season versus just doing it once or twice. And in the rest of the year, you're still working out and trying to stay in shape probably, but you're not trying to be at your playing weight, 3 or 4 different times through the season, throughout the course of a year.
Right. That goes back to that lunch pail and, going to my real job in the off season thought. These guys are 12 months out of the year committed to their physical health and well-being. And they're learning that the body needs time to recover as well. You can't just, hit the weight room every day for 12 months and expect to grow. There has to be a balance. And I think J.C. Tretter has been a really strong advocate for eliminating a lot of the contact early on. He says, they proved it last year that injuries declined last year during the regular season as a result of guys not getting beat up so much in training camp and in OTAs. So, like I said, it's just the NFL evolving like everything else.
Yeah, I mean, he's caught some grief for it, but he's right. So it's just, I think it's how it's going to be. So what do you guys think about adding that extra game? And Jeff, we may have talked about this, but what do you guys think about playing 17 games?
I think it's going to be awesome. I mean, the only thing is I guess the concern is people will get injured more, but didn't they cut out a preseason game or 2?
Right. That's the trade-off.
Yeah. Yeah. And
they're doing 2 this season?
3.
No.
They're doing 3. I mean, look,
preseason games. Yeah.
I always love the preseason games just because it's a chance. It's like you're watching the XFL by game 4. Like nobody's actually going to be in the NFL. So I actually find that very interesting. I think it's fascinating watching like on a professional field there's usually a couple quarterbacks that like can't throw a 15-yard out route, and it just feels like it looks like I'm watching me play with my friends. So it's like I think, oh, maybe I could be on the Eagles. Like,
you're looking for guys to be on your show at that point too.
Exactly. No, it really is. And I'm also like, I also have like a fantasy. Like, if you could take out the death part of this is going to sound like something a sociopath would say. But let's just say something happened where, like, do you remember that movie We Are Marshall, where like the plane crashes and the whole football team dies, and then they have to play like nothing but like underweight freshmen that year?
Yep.
Yep. It's like there's something kind of that would be cool. Not if everybody died, but let's just say everybody got COVID all at once but survived it. And for one season, the Raiders were nothing but their fourth string players. Like that would be fun for me. Like they would immediately become my favorite team. So there's something cool to me about the preseason where I'm thinking of like Colt Brennan is just a quarterback because he just passed away. But like the guy from Hawaii that I loved watching in college, when he was with the Redskins for 2 years, like lit up the preseason. He threw like 8 touchdowns and no picks. He would just dominate in the preseason. It's the best time to dream on guys, Yeah. And it's also like it's different because you're like, oh, the only guys that are going to get hurt and it's going to be bad for them really are the guys that have a lot of money. The guys that are trying to make the team, that preseason game is important. Like that's their audition for not just that team, but the rest of the league. Right. So I would say like 17th game is cool, whatever. It's a chance for the owners to make more money. I'd love to see them use that money to like pay for healthcare for the players or something to make it a little more ethical to have them going out there and playing another competitive game every year. But as a fan, I think it's great. As a human being, it's probably, I'm sure they're doing it in a fucked up way that I don't support. and I will kind of miss watching dudes with no chance to ever actually be in the NFL get to be on an NFL team for a little bit.
True.
Yeah, nobody likes the preseason games. Like, I don't know. I never miss a game for the Eagles. I always watch their I think I probably watch the preseason games more attentively than I watch the regular season. It's just to me, it's so much fun. Those are the guys that are like so excited to be there,
Well, you're right. Yeah, for some of those guys, it's the only time they're ever going to get to wear an NFL uniform.
Yeah, and people, it's like people act like they suck too, and it's like those scrubs that never make an NFL roster would still beat the living crap out of you if you talked back to them at a bar. Like they're still huge dudes. They just suck, like in comparison to like the greatest players in the world, but they're still like the third greatest players, and like they're still incredible athletes. But yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. I have a joke where I talk about football players and being like, anytime I call a football player injury prone, I remember the time I farted and threw out my back. And that's a true story. It's like, who are we to ever criticize these amazing men at any point, even the ones playing in the 4th preseason game? They are incredible athletes. Yeah. And also, if they were playing in the 1950s, they would be like, they would kill Otto Graham. They would be the greatest players in the NFL. Like, it's just that like they happen to be born at a time where there's a million other people that are also that athletic. But yeah, I don't know. I find it very compelling. I'll miss the 4th preseason game. I feel like I'm the only one pouring one out for the 4th preseason game, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah, well, 4th preseason game, we just always hope that we survive it without a major injury.
I hope you get nothing but injured, and then the 4th string players have to band together, and it becomes like one of that movie with Keanu Reeves and stuff, where they all gotta figure out. There's a kicker that doesn't speak English, and there's a receiver with one hand. Like that's fun. Like to me, that's what football is about. It's like a ragtag group of people that now all of a sudden, those are the Cardinals.
We saw some of that last year with COVID. I mean, the Broncos starting a wide receiver at quarterback who was on the practice squad the week before. And
I watched that game twice. It was so
we lost
great.
our entire receiver room. What was that, the Jets game, Rod? That we lost our entire receiver room?
Yeah, I think it was the Jets
positive
game.
COVID tests. Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
that was fair.
Yeah, hey, you're right. These guys have to be ready to step up, right?
I'll tell you the even better one, because like I love college football because you really get huge underdogs. When it's like I don't know, Oklahoma is playing the Citadel or something, and they're like 80-point underdogs. But like to me, this last college football season was so great because you'd have those games, and then somebody like 3 or 4 dudes from some big school would all have an orgy with some prostitutes, and they'd all get COVID and lie about it. And then all of a sudden the Citadel's in it at halftime. Like it was such a great evening. It was such an evening out of the talent in college football. I feel like there were upsets every week. Like I loved it. I don't love millions of people dying, but one of the nice things from COVID was I felt like it's all of a sudden things that don't really matter that much, or I should say like as much as they used to, like team discipline, like not like paying attention to team curfew, all of a sudden became the most important thing to your team having success. Like if you could just not go out and get blown by people with COVID, you could win a championship. Like
Right.
if you could just control your urges. That was like the whole thing with the NBA bubble was like, who will get a prostitute in there first? Who's going to sneak somebody through the sewers into their hotel? And whatever team could stave that off the longest really had a chance of doing something in the bubble. So yeah, I really liked that like human element of the game now was kind of like reintroduced in a horrifying but still, if we're honest, funny way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, we've gone in 2 seasons. 2 seasons ago, there were 4 preseason games, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 seasons ago, at least for the Browns, the starters played hardly at all. Okay, so it was under a different regime, but the thought was to keep these guys safe and not let them get hurt and just let them play a tiny little bit, and they'd be ready. Then we went to last season where there weren't any preseason games because of COVID. Now we've got 3 preseason games. How do you guys think the average NFL team is going to play this for the 3 preseason games with their starters and backups? How do you think it breaks down?
Jeff, you go first, man.
Jeff gets first on this.
I don't think it changes really. I mean, the focus is still on getting prepared for the real games, right? Games that matter. And I think what's funny about it is when Freddie Kitchens was not playing guys, he was an idiot for not doing it, for approaching it that way. And out of necessity, last year nobody played, and everything was hunky dory. So. Yeah. You know what? I don't think it matters. I think, it's about the talent you have and how healthy people stay and how the team gels and all that determine your success, not, who beats the shit out of each other in preseason games.
Right.
The interesting thing to me about the new schedule is, with it being a 17-game schedule, there's going to be some imbalance in the schedule. Home and away is thrown out of kilter because some teams will have that 17th game away and the other half will have them at home. You'll play an out of division team that your in division team or in division rivals may not play. There's all kinds of interesting dynamics that'll happen with strength of schedule by going to an odd number of regular season games, and that'll be curious to see how they use that to reward bad and good team, or reward bad teams and penalize good teams going forward.
So what do you expect, Eric?
I'll tell you exactly what I expect, and I'll make it specific to your guys' team. Your third string quarterback is a guy named Kyle Laletta. It looks like he's 26 years old. He was drafted by the Giants in the 4th round in 2018. He was also on the practice squads for the Eagles and the Falcons. I think you rest Baker. You rest Case Keenum, old suitcase Keenum, and you let Kyle Lauletta start the 3 games in the preseason. And then you just let him start the whole season as well, and you win the Super Bowl with Kyle Lauletta. That's what I'm calling. I think this guy's got unrealized potential. No one's given him a chance. Will the Browns be strong enough in spirit to give this guy the opportunity he so richly deserves? He played quarterback at the University of Richmond. Okay, they were the Richmond Spiders. That sounds like a minor league baseball team. I mean, I don't know how much more likable this guy could be. Kyle Lauletta wins the Super Bowl for the Browns. I'll bet my house on it right now.
Yeah, some people liked him coming out of college.
Those people were right. Everybody else was wrong. Kyle Lauletta is going to make this team. Suitcase Keenum can hit the bricks. Lauletta's getting second string by the end of the preseason. And look, Baker throws an incomplete pass. I think he's going to get the Derek Anderson treatment all over again. I think Kyle Lauletta comes in and takes this team to the promised land.
Could be the biggest story since Don Strock coming out of retirement to help us 35 years ago.
There you go, man. Look,
that would be huge.
He was like the fourth or fifth quarterback that year.
Let me give a real answer real quick. I think they're going to partition people's workload out in the beginning of the season more. That's what I think. And I think the idea of like the just to take like Nick Chubb. I mean, I just think you're going to see running backs in the beginning, even guys who were like what you would call workhorses, are going to have like 50-50 loads with second and third string running backs. I think they're going to do that, and I think coaches are going to save up for a push in week 16, or I guess week 18 now, 17, 18, that last 17th game. I think you'll see a lot more. You'll see just people like really taking it easy in the beginning and trying to kind of like LeBron-esque manage their energy and their minutes.
Right.
There's only so many bullets in the chamber. You can only get hit as hard as someone can hit you so many times until your ribs just explode or you can't take it anymore. So switching out the preseason game for the regular season game, it's obviously way more stress on the guys playing to do one more real game than the BS that goes into a preseason game that I happen to like a lot.
Yeah. So if you guys were going to pick an over under, let me say 3 quarters in the preseason, over under 3 quarters. How many quarters will these starters play? And I said 3 quarters. I probably should say, let's say 3.5 quarters. That probably makes it easier for you guys. What do you think, Jeff?
I think in the exception to this will be the couple positions on defense where they're really trying to figure out who the starters will be. D tackle and all the linebacker positions.
I'm talking about the guys who have a job.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, on offense, we pretty much know who the starters are, and there's really not a lot of mystery in terms of who's going to be on the team. I think those guys play pretty sparingly, and they probably just try to work some stuff in the first quarter, and then pretty quick you're going to see a bunch of young guys, that are battling for the last 5 special teams spots on the roster.
Yeah, you agree, Eric? Under 3.5.
Yeah, no, I agree with Jeff. I didn't hear the question. My wife texted me, "What are we eating for dinner?" Can you say the question one more time?
I just say give us if I set the over under at 3.5 quarters, do you think starters play over under for the 3 preseason games this year?
Oh, what Jeff said. No, now that I know the question, I think what Jeff said is true. I would guess under.
Yeah, I would guess it's no more than 3 quarters. I'd be surprised if it's even that much on most teams. So.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, I tell you guys what, I think we're going to wrap things up. So So Eric, let's plug your stuff once again.
Oh, you remembered, Rod. You remembered.
Yeah.
Well, you said in the beginning you don't remember usually, so I feel honored that
I
I'm
all
one
the
of the
time, but I've got a little bit of a rested brain coming off of vacation, and I actually pulled it off.
Where did you take a vacation to?
We were in Siesta Key for a week.
Where I don't even know where that is. Siesta
It's
Key?
in Florida on the Gulf side.
So like Key West and then Siesta Key's the other side.
Yeah, it's down in that general area. Yeah.
Gotcha. I used to do Daytona Beach in college. We do spring break down there. Nice. We did Daytona Beach. We did Cocoa Beach. I never got down to Key West though. That was another like. Florida's huge. I feel like it's another 25 hours to drive down past Miami, right?
It's like far. Yeah.
Yeah, no, people don't realize that the top of Florida and the bottom of Florida is 5 times as wide as the United States. It's a huge drive. They don't draw it to proportion on maps.
Yeah, and it's still smaller than Georgia.
It's crazy, right? The thing people don't realize that Florida is 35 times the size of Alaska. But that is a fact, and people should remember it from listening to this podcast. Look, if you want to find me, and you want to find my hilarious podcast where I talk about quarterbacks like Kyle Laletta, you just go to any podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and just type in "Bring in the Backups." It'll pop up. And then if you want to follow my stand-up or follow me on social media, I'm at Erick Hellwig on all the platforms: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And you can go to my website for all of this, erickhellwig.com. And I obviously, just like you guys, really appreciate anytime I can go on somebody's show and promote, and that you guys are sharing, me with your audience. And anybody that is liking my appearance on your pod, definitely come over and check out my stuff. I'd love to have you as a listener.
Absolutely. Jeff, do you have any closing words for us tonight?
Well, I just want to say that I'm really thrilled that Erick has no material other than Kyle Laletta from the Browns for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and then we finally broke that cycle.
Finally, you guys cover the things that people want to hear about. They want to know that Kyle Laletta has 0 touchdowns and 1 interception for his career for now. But he's coming. He's coming. He's on the come up. I'm telling you.
Let's hope you have nothing more to say about Kyle Laletta at the end of this season.
He started.
We'll be very happy.
3 seasons at Richmond, guys. Get a load of these numbers. He threw 73 touchdowns to 35 interceptions for a quarterback rating of 151.4. I mean, and nice. Just because Richmond was playing against teams that had someone that looked like me playing cornerback is not enough reason to not invest your full future in Kyle Laletta. I love Baker Mayfield, but trade him now for what you can get him. I'd sign this guy to a lifetime contract. Let's go.
It's the real deal.
He really is. He really is.
Bring in the backup.
Always.
That's right.
The backup has always been the most popular player in Cleveland.
Bring in the backups. He just quoted your. I think that was unintentional too. That's the name of your show. Excellent.
Was it intentional, Jeff? Did you mean to do that?
Who knows what goes on inside my brain?
You're a wild man.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Been great talking to you guys. We're going to close shop. This has been the Browns Blitz. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time.